So Wales have announced their team that's going to be going on tour this July, on a tour of South Africa. It's going to be a long summer. What is going on, guys? It's the Mad Dragon. Welcome back to another rugby news update sort of video, I guess. Wales have now announced their squad that is going to be going on tour to South Africa this July for their summer internationals. Now, this information has been out a little bit of a while. Of course, it did come out last week, but there was still a round of the URC still to go. And if anyone has ever followed Welsh rugby, at least for the last 4 or 5 years, Wales are pretty injury prone. So I was thought there's no point doing this video until we got past that final round and we managed to get through all the knocks or the little injuries, just to make sure we know who is actually going to be going on that tour. I've done a double check of some of the people that did actually take knocks in those games, and I can confirm, as far as I'm aware, everyone on this list is actually going on this tour. So it'll be a bit of fun. What we'll be doing is we'll be checking out on screen over here of the team that has been announced that's going to be going on tour. We'll have a run through the players who we think's been some good picks, who we think maybe has missed out and probably could have been chosen instead of other people, my general thoughts, and then a bit of a discussion about the actual tour that's going to be going on in South Africa. So starting off with the forwards then. In the front row, we've got Rhys Carre, Wyn Jones, Gareth Thomas, Ryan Elias. Do we have no other hookers in Wales? Ryan Elias not having the best Six Nations by any means. I think he'll be counting himself a little bit lucky to be in this team, to be honest. He was not performing well in that Six Nations. He's probably a bit lucky that Ken Owen's still out with an injury. Dewi Lake, nice to see him named in this squad. I thought he had a good Six Nations. I'm looking forward to see more from him. Sam Parry is going to be in there as well. Nice to see him getting back to this team. He's a sort of player that doesn't necessarily play badly at all, but just never really got a shot at Wales International. For whatever reason, he just never really got that. So nice to see him named in the team. Leon Brown, Thomas Francis, and Dylan Lewis. Now, there's a nice little spread and variety in this front row. I'm actually quite liking some of the players. We've got high cap players, people like Wyn Jones, Tom Francis on their 43 and 64 caps, respectively. So that's, they're pretty good in terms of caps. You've got players like Wyn Jones, who also went off with the Lions Tour, which I know a lot of people really enjoy me talking about the Lions Tour and some of the coverage. Helped us get a lot of South African subscribers, so I'm sure there'll be a couple of you guys watching this as well. He'll be a bit of an experience bank to bring into this sort of team. He'll have played South Africa a lot while he was with the Lions, so absolutely worth having him in this side. Like I said, a couple of nice players to see in there, a couple of lesser cap players, Sam Parry, Dewi Lake. We're looking forward to see how both of them get on. Ryan Elias, I just feel like maybe they could have they could have been a different hooker, potentially going over. The Six Nations was struggling for Wales, particularly in the scrummaging and the line-out areas were just all sorts of issues, so hopefully they have managed to work on that a bit. In terms of the locks, there's a couple of big calls here, actually. We've got Adam Beard, Ben Carter, Wyn Jones, and Will Rowlands. Now, there's a couple of people missing out here. Seb Davis, not named in this team. I thought it was a bit of a shame. I don't really think he's done a lot wrong, Seb Davis. I thought he was playing well in the Six Nations. He's played well in most of the games I've seen him play at international standard. Bit of a shame not to see him in there, especially with the utility. Can play lock, mainly plays lock really for Wales, but can also play flank if you really needed him to. Adam Beard, I think another good move. Of course, went off with the Lions as well. Ben Carter would be nice to see a bit more from. Will Rowlands, I think Will Rowlands could be... If I was a South African trying to design my game plan, I would say target Will Rowlands all day. It really does not take a lot for Will Rowlands to give away penalties. And as we saw in the semi-final of the World Cup, as we've seen in other international games, South Africa do love penalties. And if you give them a penalty, they will take 3 points. And they will keep doing it over and over and over again. And eventually they will just win the game through the boot of Andre Pollard or Mornay Steyn. We've seen it happen. We know they love doing it. So a player like Will Rowlands, who doesn't necessarily keep his temper or doesn't keep his discipline all the time and can be pushed a little bit, I think that might be a bit of a target from a South African standpoint. But the big name here, Wyn Jones named in this squad, which was a bit of a surprise for me. Wyn Jones, 150 caps now, had that 150 cap game against Italy, which, as someone who supports Wales, we'll forget about that. South Africa don't have Kaput, so I'm sure it'll be fine. But he didn't necessarily have the fantastic game in that. Of course, he was on with the Lions Tour, with the captaincy as well with the Lions Tour, took that injury against Japan, managed to come back from a devastating injury in just a couple of weeks to go on and play South Africa. Played fine during the South Africa tour with the Lions and some of the games we saw him over there. He came back, he took another injury, and then he's come back again. And then we've lost to Italy. I don't know. To me, I think Alan Wynne-Jones is a particularly different call this time. I understand he brings the experience, of course, with the Lions and what have you, but also with the high cap rating, 150 caps now. But to me, if Alan Wynne-Jones is looking forward to getting into the World Cup and actually surviving the World Cup, playing 3 tests against South Africa, where injury rates can potentially be very, very high. South Africa are a very physical-based team. I'm not sure if Alan Wynne-Jones was necessarily the right pick here. I might have liked to have seen Seb Davis get a few of those lower caps in the team and help generate it. I'm not sure if Alan Wynne-Jones is going to be the deciding factor in a game against South Africa. It also has the potential for injuries there, going to rule him out of a World Cup potential, rule him out of other games potential. So bit of a big call there. Personally, I might have liked to have seen Seb Davis going in there instead of Alan Wynne-Jones. And in terms of the back row, Tame Basham, who has been playing brilliantly, not just in the Six Nations, but I have seen him play a couple of games over at the Dragons recently through the URC competition. He stands out in that team completely on his own different level. Tame Basham playing really well at the minute. Talupe Faletau, of course, also went off for the Lions tour, so a bit of experience there. We know how much he likes to shift to that wing as well. So Pivac will obviously try and set up slightly different tactics, but unfortunately South Africa playing against people like Faletau and Jack Conan in that Lions tour, I'm sure they'll probably be a bit ready for what Faletau's going to offer, so bit difficult there. Dan Lydiate named back in the team. Nice to see him back in. Of course, he picked up that massive injury on his big return to Wales. Real shame for him. Hopefully looking forward to seeing him get back into this squad and having some good games against South Africa. Josh Navidi in this team, someone we love to see in there. James Ratty and Tommy Raffel, 2 uncapped players. Now, I've heard good things about Tommy from Leicester. I don't know a great deal about him, but I'm looking forward to seeing a bit more from him here. But one name that's missing here for me, and I tried my best to not be that biased when we come on to doing videos. I'm always quite open. I'm a bit of an Osprey supporter and Sport Wales when it comes to the rugby and watching the game, but doing the videos wise, I like to try and remain pretty impartial. I know a lot of you guys respect that, and that's why you subscribe to the channel. But one of the names I really feel has been missed off here is Jack Morgan. I think Jack Morgan is playing really, really well. And I was quite surprised to not see him named in this side, especially when there's 2 uncapped players coming in here now. You know, I feel like Jack Morgan coming in, he's been playing really well in the URC. I did see an interview with Pivac where he was saying that in terms of Jack Morgan, he just didn't think he was strong enough or big enough to cope with South Africa. I just don't know where that's come from, to be honest. I think Jack Morgan's been awesome. He's something like the top 3 in terms of jackal rates in the URC. He's just involved at every breakdown, really high tackle count. Personally, I would have liked to have seen Jack Morgan in there. I think there might have been a bit of a misstep with not including him personally. And then on to the backs. Starting off with the scrum halves, then Gareth Davis, Kieran Hardy and Thomas Williams. Now, a bit of a contentious one here. I'm going to throw a big one out here. I'm beginning to get more and more concerned about this choice of both Gareth Davis and Kieran Hardy. I know they both play at the Scarlets, they play with each other a lot, they help sort of compete against each other, but I really do feel like both players play in a very specific way, and they also play very similarly. The way they just play the game, the way they're trying to support the running player, the way they always look to go for the sniping run constantly, the look for the interception pass, they both do very, very similarly. The box kicking style, they both go really high or really long, and for some reason can't find that middle ground. I'm sure it's because they train the same way and train together, but they're slowly developing to be rather interchangeable. And going on a tour like this, if you find on the first 2 tours something's not going right, you want to be able to switch it up, not just swap it out for pretty much the same player. Personally here, I might have looked to go down a different route to having both of them. It's personal discretion who you'd rather go for. I still think Gareth Davis is probably slightly better than Kieran Hardy right at the minute. One name I would maybe throw into the mix here would actually be for Reese Webb. Now, when Reese Webb was playing abroad, came back to Wales, I was one of the first people that said, don't put him in the Wales team. Don't let him just get straight in. Let him come back to club level, prove he deserves to be in the Wales shirt, put him back in. He got straight into that Wales team and played pretty poorly, to be honest. I wasn't happy with his performances at all in the Wales team, and as such, left some comments. Pivac didn't like him. Pivac's dropped him from now. But seeing him play at the Ospreys, he's been playing pretty well. Brings a slightly different dynamic. He's also one of these players that looks for the ball constantly to try and go himself. But he's a very, very solid supporter of a breakaway runner, which is something I really like. And I also think, out of the scrum halves mentioned, I actually think his box kicking is better than Gareth Davis and Kieran Hardy. So for me, I might have looked here to put in Reese Webb instead of maybe Kieran Hardy, just to offer a slightly different dynamic. But Personal choice, and of course Pivac doesn't really like him anymore, so probably not going to be seeing his name anytime soon on the team sheet. On to the fly halves. Some big calls here. Gareth Hanscom coming back into the team. Of course, huge ACL injury ruled his career all over the place a little bit of a while back. So nice to see him finally getting back into a Wales shirt against some Tier 1 nations especially. Dan Biggar, of course, named for the captain for this tour, so he's always going to be in there. Got his 100 caps now, also against that Italy team. Reese Patchell is named as the final fly half. Now, big call here not to include Callum Sheedy. I have tried to look it up. I can't find any injury news anywhere. I think he's fully fit, just not picked for the team. And I think that's a big move. I think that's a real big call. I think Callum Sheedy's playing exceptionally well, especially against some of the Tier 2 nations. He's played very, very well. And I think just coming on from the bench, they offer a very different dynamic to Dan Biggar. Dan Biggar's very structured, very organised. They have a very set way of playing. And I think Callum Sheedy's a bit more rogue and just sort of picks different angles. I think he's a really good player to come on from the bench. I'm not sure whether Gareth Hanscom or Reese Patchell offer the same skill set as Callum Sheedy, but I think I probably would have gone down there. Reese Patchell's one of those players that plays really well at club level, but just never really got going in international. I've just never seen a game from Reese Patchell at international standard where I think that lad is dominating this game. It just doesn't really come across to me, whereas I have seen that from Callum Sheedy, even with potentially less caps than Reese Patchell in international. Personally, for me here, I might have gone for Callum Sheedy over Reese Patchell, but I assume the reason Patchell's coming here is because of the halfback linkage with the two Scarlet scrum halves, so I assume that's why Pivac's gone for that choice. In terms of the centres, some other big calls here. George North been named as a centre. Nice to see him getting back into the squad. Over 100 caps now with him. He's on to 102 caps. Probably as many head injuries along the way, to be honest. I just got to hope George North doesn't pick up another injury. A team like South Africa, especially with people like Dialende and Lekanya Am in that centre partnership, they're going to run hard at you and they're going to be willing to tackle you really, really hard. So hopefully George North can avoid any sort of head injuries. Nick Tompkins, Owen Watkin and Johnny Williams also named in the centre team. Now, Johnny Williams has been playing really well at the Scarlets. Really, really glad to see him back in this team. Personally, for me, the partnership I want to be seeing here against the South Africa team is Owen Watkin at 13 and Johnny Williams at 12. I want to be seeing one man built for attacking and Owen Watkin being absolutely on it in terms of defence. That's what I want to see this setup be now, because you've got to play different ways. I want to be seeing that link together. I think that link will be really, really awesome. George North, they've tried experimenting with him in that centre. I understand he can shift to wing as well. So, utility, probably a good choice to have in the team. But I feel like Pivac will play George North in a very similar way to how we saw Jamie Roberts utilised by Gatland, in that he's basically a big boy. He's a big boy that's going to run forwards. That's basically what I'm expecting George North to do, and just hope that a little bit of flair that he has, allow him to get a little bit of a sidestep, maybe smash through the first tackler. Maybe that's what they're hoping he'll be able to achieve. And then finally in this back three, Josh Adams, Alex Cuthbert, Reece Zammit and Liam Williams. Now, I think there's a misstep here for me personally. I'm really not seeing a lot of people who are willing to be dedicated fullbacks in this team. Liam Williams is the only standout for me. I understand Josh Adams has played a bit of time with slipping back into fullback when he's required to. Normally, when Liam Williams has got a yellow card, that's normally how it's gone. Gareth Hanscom can also fall back into that fullback if needed, but they're just not names I associate with being a fullback. Now, Alex Cuthbert being in the team, I think, is a really big call. Alex Cuthbert didn't have a bad Six Nations at all, actually. I didn't think he played badly. But the thing that still stands out to me with Alex Cuthbert is he is all about the attack. And I still question his defence every week. Every time I see Alex Cuthbert, he always does this thing for whatever reason where he just does not trust whoever's inside him to make the tackle, and instead always cuts in to make the 2-on-1 tackle, which always leaves room on the outside. Now, a team like South Africa, where you've got Cheslin Colby, Mapimpi and Kosi, just all these lads that are on the wing, if you give them any room, they're just going to be scoring tries. We saw it in the World Cup. We've seen it in other games. You can't afford to give them room, let alone literally run away from your own wing to tackle someone else. I'm not sure if Alex Cuthbert was the right choice here. Reece Zammit's playing really well at Gloucester at the minute, so I think he probably deserves a spot. Josh Adams had a good Six Nations, so I would also have included him. Personally, for me here, I might have looked to have found another winger who's also comfortable playing fullback. A bit difficult because I do know people like Lee Halfpenny and Johnny McNichol are now out injured, so the numbers cut down a bit, but I'm sure there's other names there that have played a bit of time in both wing and fullback, or maybe even find a dedicated fullback. Someone that you see, someone sort of like Dan Evans, who you can maybe see get into the team a little bit more and actually play that fullback position. But if you desperately needed him to, probably would be more than happy going on the wing as well, just to have that extra bit of coverage. So I'm not sure about there. I maybe would have made a bit of a different choice. But in terms of the overall team, this is pretty much the team you probably would be expecting. A couple of the uncapped names maybe people weren't ready for. Of course, there are a lot of other people missing. Ken Owens, Justin Tipuric, Moriarty, Aaron Wainwright, McNichol, Halfpenny, Halahola, all these players are out injured, of course. We're Wales. There's always a bunch of injuries that come with it. So there's also a couple of big names missing. I think this is probably the team most people would expect. But in terms of the team generally, I think there's definitely a couple of changes, like I've said, along the way that I might have looked for just different options, especially with building towards a World Cup now. Building towards a World Cup less than a year away, you want to be generating a team that's got some depth, that's got a lot of different players, maybe utility in players. And in terms of going into this tour, what I want to be seeing from Wales is a true belief that they can actually win some of these games. If you want to be winning a World Cup, you have to be capable of beating a South Africa. You have to be capable of beating New Zealand. You have to be capable of beating France at home. These are the big teams you want to be beating to show you deserve to have the ability to win a World Cup. So for me, going into this tournament, what I want to see from Wales, because I think it's going to be a really tough ask. I have seen a stat around South Africa and Wales meetings before. I believe there is something ridiculous, like Wales have played South Africa in South Africa 10 times and lost 10 times. And then in terms of the URC, the Welsh clubs going over to South Africa to play the South African clubs, they went there, they played 8 games and they lost 8 games. So going over there is a really, really tough ask. South Africa is still playing good rugby at the minute. They have a game plan and they just bring it to you and it's up to you to beat them. And I think Wales should really be looking at to try and find a way to win a game. Don't play the set tactic. Don't just play the forwards game, because that's what South Africa wants to do. I want to be seeing some different tactics. I want to be seeing some little kicks. I want to be seeing them hold on possession. I want to see discipline better, less penalties given away. Don't just give South Africa the 3 points. Don't let them kick into the corner for the driving maul, because the Wales maul just hasn't been up to defending greatly recently. So for me, I just want to see this Wales team come up with some new ideas, things to build towards the World Cup and prove they can actually beat a World Cup South Africa team. But in terms of the team itself, I don't think it's a terrible team. I definitely think it's a team that's got the potential to actually beat South Africa if organised correctly. Just one of the things that I think always steps out to me in this team recently is just that I can't find too many linking players. And that's something I always look for. Everyone knows now I'm a big fan of playing Rugby 22. I love designing teams. I love talking about rugby. I like a bit of rugby analysis. And one thing that I've always liked in team creation is the link players. Players that play together week in, week out. When we look at teams like New Zealand, South Africa, England even, we have these sort of things where these players play together week in, week out at club level. They're brought into international and they play together. And I just feel like when I go through some of these Wales teams that I just feel like the players that are going to be picked in the starting 15, because we already sort of know what sort of players Pivac likes to start as a 15, and I just feel it loses that bit of consistency. I would imagine for that front row, they'll probably start off with like a Wyn Jones, Ryan Elias normally gets picked, and probably a Dylan Lewis or a Tom Francis. But every week, you'll see 2 Scarlets there playing, but also it's going to be someone from the Ospreys and Cardiff, which means you have a really short time to learn how to play together. And I just feel like it begins to impact. We see other international teams bring in a front row, all from somewhere. In terms of the locks, we've been seeing a lot recently of sort of Adam Beard and Will Rowlands playing together, an Ospreys and a Dragon. Now, the link up here for Alan Wyn Jones and Adam Beard will be useful because they played South Africa with the Lions team. They both play at Ospreys and both play in Wales. Now, that's a really nice setup, and that should hopefully allow a bit of strength to come towards the actual line-out area. But then if we look at the back row, we've got Tame Basham from Dragons, we've got Faletau from Bath, we've got Lydiate from the Ospreys, Navidi and Ratti from Cardiff, and Rafael from Leinster. So you just see these players are coming from all over the place. So it's just about building that team cohesion. One of the areas that I think this stands out the most to me now is in this halfback partnership. Of course, with Dan Biggar being captain going into this, I imagine he'll be starting a lot of these games at fly half, and yet he's going to be paired up with either the Scarlets scrum half in Gareth Davis and Kieran Hardy, or the Cardiff half-back partnership with Thomas Williams. Now, Dan Biggar plays at Northampton. These lads do not play together every week. They play 5 games over the Six Nations, and they don't play for a while, and then they have to try and relearn how to interlink together. What I want to be seeing is maybe the option to pick some players that will play together better. This is why I was sort of suggesting maybe going down, picking Webb, because then you would maybe have Webb and Hanscom play together. Maybe you would have Patchell play with Gareth Davis, have a bit of a Scarlets partnership. But if you're willing to not have the club level teams play together, that to me doesn't really bring a reason why not to bring Sheedy in. I think Sheedy's performing slightly higher, and I would rather have Sheedy on the field than maybe some of the other fly halves that have been picked. I just think there's not that much linking. From what we see in other Tier 1 nations in terms of rugby, we just don't see these teams gelling together by picking partnerships, people that play together, halfbacks that play together, centres that play together, locks and front rows that play together. That's what I think this team needs a bit. So hopefully Pivac's got the right idea here, but I think it's going to be a very, very tough test over in South Africa. Now, the July internationals is a bit of a tricky one for me personally to try and record. There's so many games that goes on. There's like 6 games a week, but they all happen on a Saturday. So in terms of coverage of the games, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to try and do as many preview videos as I can. And probably what I'm going to do is be picking some games from the weekends and doing one of the match report videos. We did them during the Lions, and you guys seem to love it. We got loads of subscribers in from South Africa because you guys were really enjoying some of my quite critical, quite unbiased opinions on some of the games and stuff. So I'm really looking forward to doing that. And already I'm thinking that South Africa versus Wales is probably going to be one of the sets of games I am going to be paying quite close attention to. I'm going to want to watch it personally, but also do a bit of coverage on the channel. So I'm going to try and do some match reports for those games as soon as they come out. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel just to keep up to date when those videos come out immediately, so you can get my thoughts on the game and a bit of a match report in case anyone wasn't able to watch it. The 3 tests are going to be going on in July. The first game is on the 2nd of July. The second game is on the 9th of July, and the third and final test is going to be on the 16th of July. It's going to be 3 different tests playing in 3 different stadiums. I believe Sky Sports is going to be showing them all, so I'm going to have to try and work out how I can watch them because that's going to be a thing. The July internationals are a little bit awkward. They're a little bit all over the place with who's showing them, and everyone sort of has a little bit on itself. So I'm going to try my best to do it, but I understand a couple of people won't be able to watch those games. That's why I think those match reports will be an awful lot of fun to do. But let me know what you guys think of the team that have been mentioned. I know we have a lot of Wales subscribers on the channel as well, so I'll be really interested to know what you guys think of the team that's been announced. So make sure you do drop that down in the comments, and make sure you do like this video because it does really help the video out, and just lets me know you want to see more videos like this where we talk about rugby, not necessarily playing some rugby, but actually getting into the nitty-gritty and talking a little bit about the team and what have you. But I hope you've all enjoyed today, guys, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.